Hey everybody, welcome back, and today we're going to be talking about the little X Series on-wall speaker, which is kind of an updated version of an old speaker that we had called the AV1RS, which was a great speaker. Oh, and today's shirt that I'm wearing, it's an old soccer shirt, paying a little homage to my old soccer buddies from the Classic Raiders and some of the most influential guys that I ever played soccer with. I think about those guys every time I see this shirt in the closet, and I saw it in there today and thought, you know what? Thinking about those guys, I'm going to wear that shirt in the video today. And those are the guys I played with all through high school. They were all older than me. Looked up to those guys, and they kind of helped guided me and kind of helped me when I was really young, learning to play the game of soccer. And later in life, when we were in our 30s and 40s, we came together again and played as the Classic Raiders instead of just the Raiders, and it was a great time. For a little period there, we all hung together again and played, and it was a lot of fun. So, back to speakers. Now, the AV1RS was originally designed to fill a niche in the market that wasn't being filled. It was to solve problems that weren't being solved, and in the same way, this speaker does the exact same thing. The problems that I saw at the time were for home theater systems and the surround speakers and the sidewall speakers. A lot of that stuff just didn't really work. And on most applications, the seating isn't ideal for a home theater because it's a home setting. An ideal home theater, you want to be as far from each speaker. You want equal distance from the fronts to the center to the ones off on the side or the rear or the ones overhead. You want space and distance. And that's good in theory, but in practice, a lot of people are on a couch that's against the wall, and that back wall is it. And then there's everything in front of them. So mounting a speaker on each side of the couch aimed right at your head is a bad idea. It's going to localize everything. It's too close to you, too loud. It's not going to create that big, deep, like, oh, there's that sound of whatever back here behind me that moved from left to right, and it's not going to do that. Also, what I saw on sidewall speakers was the same problem, and a lot of times the sidewall speaker would be very localized or it would be too close. And what a lot of companies did to try to resolve that is create some bipolar speakers where they had drivers facing towards the front, drivers facing towards the rear, and then the listener would set in what's called the null. So it would send part of that signal to the front of the room, it'd send part of it to the back of the room. There was a cancellation pattern in the middle to keep it from sounding like it was right there on the wall next to you. It was an interesting effect, but it didn't work. What it did was it scattered that signal into bits and pieces, kind of like taking the high part of a vocal and sending it one way and the lower part and sending it another, and it really just didn't work. It was just a disaster. There was nowhere in the room you could measure that response from that sidewall speaker like that and get any resemblance of the input signal. So it really, really didn't work. So we designed the AV1RS, which is a wall-mounted Omni speaker. So it mounts on the wall like this. This is the box here. It mounts on the wall, faces up toward the ceiling. As you can see, there's a little bit of a tilt to it, and the drivers are angled out to 10 degrees. And what we had to do on the design of it is take into account the wall reflection and the ceiling reflection as part of the frequency response of the speaker. Had to do the same with this one. The difference is we've updated the tweeter to the new Peerless tweeter, which is one of the best dome tweeters out there. So it mounts like this with a little M130 sealed box, so it doesn't take a lot of airspace. And the drivers face up. I know a lot of people think, well, it's just the woofers and stuff are pointing up, so it's bouncing sound, and here, in a way, it kind of is, but it's also an omnidirectional way that thing produces its range. So it's a little bit of both. What the wall and ceiling reflections are doing, and mounting this high up on the wall, is it's getting everything up there to where it's creating distance. It's creating a little space to where it's adding a time delay, and it's getting the speaker further away from you. So if you're sitting on a couch and it's against the wall, or you're in a bedroom and your headboard is up against the wall, that's where you are watching TV. With this high up over the listening position, it's creating that additional space that you needed for things to develop and sound as if they're coming from a much further away distance, because you're actually adding some time delay. You're also softening a lot of the sound so that it's not a bright in-your-face type of a response. Anytime you take a high-frequency driver and you get off-axis on it, you're not going to hear the higher frequency ranges so much. That higher frequency ranges start to beam. And so you're just hearing some of that ambience of it reflecting off the wall and off the ceiling. And those reflections tend to get softened a little bit and versus the on-axis response. High frequency is easily softened when you reflect it off of something versus the lower frequencies, which as the wavelengths get longer, it just reflects right off without any problem. So it does soften the top end a little bit, so that brightness is taken away. And it works well as an on-wall speaker up front. It's still giving you that big, non-localized sound field and not so localized as if I've got a speaker right there and it's right in my ear. It's creating this bigger, open space with this omnidirectional pattern that it's creating. So let's look at the frequency response of this thing. And this frequency response, I'm so proud of these things, man. They look so good. Let's start with this in an impedance curve. The impedance on this thing dips to a minimum of 5.6 ohms. It's really a good 6-8 ohm load all the way across, so it's really easy to drive. The crossover response, if you look at it here, it's crossing just above 2 kHz. And if you're looking at this, and if you look at the on-axis response, which is not, well, it's not really so much on-axis, but you're looking at an in-room response, and you have to measure this with an ungated time window versus all these other speakers that you see me measure. I'm measuring with a gated time window, so I'm measuring the very start of it, and I'm letting 4 milliseconds of that window go by, and then I'm creating a stop. So I'm seeing only what the speaker's doing and not any room reflections, no wall reflections, nothing. Just looking at the speaker. Can't do that with this. What we're having to do with this is measure it so that we see what it's doing with the wall and the ceiling reflection. So I have the microphone set much further away, and I'm moving the microphone forward and back and at different heights, and I'm looking at the average overalls. And this frequency response that you see is super smooth. To get a frequency response of a speaker this smooth, while you're taking into account a wall reflection and a ceiling reflection, is almost unheard of. That's crazy accurate. So from anywhere in the room, even if you move the microphone or your ear forward or back of the speaker, it still has that same sound. It really doesn't change when you move into a different position. It maintains the same exact response because it's still taking into account the wall and ceiling reflection. So you're really not moving off axis like you would on a normal speaker, where you're getting to where you're off axis of the tweeter and it's starting to narrow in its range. It doesn't do that when you're already off axis to begin with and you're taking that into account. If you were to look at the on axis response, like if you were to measure right on, you'd see the tweeter level is much higher than the woofer level, and we have to balance it that way. So when you take into account those reflections, we get a flat response. So you see it rolled off a little bit on top, and that's okay. That's not a bad thing, especially in a home theater environment where you got lots of speakers set up in there. You don't want to overload yourself with some of that really high frequency directly pointed at you because it's going to burn a hole in your head. It's going to be overly bright, and a lot of those rooms are overly bright for home theater settings. A lot of times it's just a living room. So that really helps soften the sound of it. And a lot of guys have been using these on the ceiling as well. You can mount that on the ceiling so that the tweeter is 22 inches from the wall, or you can mount it on the wall so that the tweeter is 22 inches from the ceiling. Either way, you can line the ceiling with these things and aimed right at the wall, and it's going to create this big non-localized field versus, especially a lot of guys with 8-foot ceilings, where you put a bunch of speakers in the ceiling and you might be sitting right underneath one of them, and you're closer to that one than you are the rest of them, and it kind of messes things up. It would be better if they were further away. If you had a 12-foot ceiling, then the spacing of the ones above you tend to work out a lot better. You can hear the movement of something moving around. It's not thrown off by one speaker being right over you. this really helps that situation. It also works really well in the new Atmos configurations as the front height speakers. So you can use these at front heights, sidewalls, you can use them on ceilings, you can use them on the rear, you can use them in all those applications, and it'll help create that big sound field that you're wanting to create with those applications. And so it solves a ton of problems. And so this is going to be up on the website in a few days, and you can order it also with a flat pack, and Killian CNC cut a flat pack for you guys. Flat pack's $200, and all the pieces fit neatly together. There's even a little notch here on the ends so that these things line up and help center this thing, so when you're gluing it together, it all fits together really well. And the way you mount this on the wall is awesome. There's this little wall cleat that you mount on the wall, and it's got a 45-degree angle cut on the back side of it. So you mount this on one of the studs. Find a stud in the wall, mount this straight to it, and then use maybe some sheetrock anchors for the ends. And then on the back of the speaker, you've got kind of the opposite of this cleat. So you can just slide the speaker down over it, and as it slides down over it, it pulls the speaker up against it. There's also this space here behind it, where not this one, this was a prototype, but where you have the binding post cup right there on the back. It's in a recessed area, so you can run your speaker wire into it, get it put inside, and that little bit of slack that you've got there will be in that space that's just right there, that's built into the box. And then you just slide it over the cleat, and it's mounted on the wall, and it works fantastic. So you got to do a little measuring to figure out the height of the speaker, getting this 22 inches from the ceiling, and where this needs to go in relation, and get that mounted on the wall. And all of that works out great. You can paint these, you can veneer them. If you want this thing fully assembled, the assembled price is $300 for the pair. They're mirror imaged, so you got tweeters to the inside or tweeters to the outside. And then if you want one fully veneered, in the $500 range, you can have a choice of different veneers, and Killian will cut these things, veneer it, and have it done to where you just drop the drivers in, mount the crossover in, and it's easy. Very simple crossover. It's easy to assemble. I think we're starting at $269 for the kit, and this thing, like I said, it solves all those problems that is created when you try to put a home theater system in an environment of a home. So if you have any other questions about this, fire them at me, and I'll try to answer them in the comments section. Appreciate you guys watching another video, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Hit the subscribe button down below too. I love seeing those subscribe rates going up, and then you know when we drop a new video. That's it. See you guys in the next one.